So I can see a number of files on the Z drive. So I'm going to get those files and send them off to the registry and see what happens to all those files there. I'm really pleased about these files that you've created, because we're going to get a variety of different errors. That's really good. Okay, so here I am back with FileZilla. Is anybody actually running FileZilla in the room at the moment? No? Oh, okay, there we go, that's fine, good. Okay, I've got some jolly good files here. And I'm going to drag those across and put them into the to-reg directory. Now we might have to wait a little while. Oh no. Guess where these files will have ended up in. So if I go to the reject directory, and I'm refreshing the screen, and one by one we'll see what happens to these files. Now, some have been rejected with an error 200, some have been rejected with an error 297. Now, the error 297, if we went and had a look at what that means, you might be able to spot it if you have a look at the file names. One of the things about files you send to the registry is don't have any spaces in the names of the files, because if you do, it'll be rejected with a 297 error. So that's why those files got rejected first up. So if we corrected those files by taking the spaces out of the file names and then sent them again, they would be rejected again for the reason 200. Okay, so back to the slides now. Now, the files that you send to the registry, they have to be in a special format called CSV, and that stands for, anybody know? Comma separated values. And are most people familiar with the CSV format? It's when you send information and it's in a fixed format with commas separating the values. So, as an example, let's suppose that we wanted to send some information about people, and the format that was specified was that the fields were name, age, and hobby. So you've got name, age, and hobby, and you supply that information with commas between the name and the age and the hobby. So there's also a mandatory optional specification here that some fields you have to specify, like name. So for instance, in this first case here, John Smith age 45, hobby is philately. Jane Carruthers, comma, and there's a missing field for age because ladies are not required to disclose their age. So that's optional, but you do have to have those commas in because otherwise you wouldn't know what order the fields were in. So that's the CSV format. And in the functional specification, that marvelous document I told you about, which is in your related documents folder, that has got the specification for the first line of any file that you send to the registry. And it's got to start off with HDR, capital H, capital D, capital R. It's a 3-character field and it's mandatory. And then you have a comma. And then the next field is the process identifier. And I'll go on to the next slide just to show you some examples of process identifiers. RQNetMaint. That's a request for distributor maintenance of an ICP to take place. RQRepMaint for a trader, RQMepMaint for an MEP. There are other types of processes. For instance, if you're starting off a switch, let's suppose you want to switch an ICP from one trader to another trader. The gaining trader is going to send a file, and the process identifier is RQSwitchNT. If you wanted to see that ICP listing report, remember the ICP listing report? Well, you do an RQ ICP list. That's the process identifier. So go back for a moment. So that's the second field, a comma. And then the sender. Now the sender, this is the 4-character code of the participant who's sending stuff. So it could be, in this case, it might be net1 who's sending information. And the recipient is going to be RGST, the registry itself. So you're either sending stuff to the registry, and then the registry will forward it on to whoever needs to know about it. Will notify, put files in people's from reg directory. So you're either sending stuff to the registry or the registry is sending stuff to you. For instance, if you requested a report, an ICP listing report, where is it going to appear? It'll appear in your from reg directory. And then the creation date, and it's highly specific, DD/MM/YYYY, so that's the format of the date. It's got to be in exactly that format. And the creation time, hours, minutes, and seconds. So this is the date and the time when you're going to be sending the stuff to the register. It doesn't have to be too precise. And then the number of detail records. So we could be doing, in fact, we will be creating an ICP in this by sending a file. But you could use the file to create a dozen ICPs all in one go. And if you did that, then what you'd have to have after the header record is you'd have to have one detail row for each ICP that was created. So that the number of detail records is specifying how many lines, detail lines, to expect after the header line, this first line. And of course, if you don't supply the correct number of lines, then your file is going to be rejected for that reason. And then there is an optional user reference, a bit of, you can write a comment up to 32 characters. So we have an example I don't know if you can read that. It actually is in your notes. But if I have a look at that, HDR, okay, so that's the first field, then a comma, RQ rep maint. So obviously this is some trader doing maintenance of the ICP information, and it's being sent by ret A to RGST, that's the registry. And here's the date and the time when it's being sent. And the number 5 is the number of ICPs that are being maintained. And then there's a comment here, optional comment about what it's all about. Ret A is updating some ICPs. So that's the format of the header record. Now in the functional specification document, where I pinched this picture from, cut and pasted that picture, it's got this map of all the different processes and how they're known. So for instance, to create an ICP, that's called a DC010. So if you search in the functional specification for DC010, you should be able to find what kind of file you should send to the registry. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to my course files, and in fact it's in the related documents, the functional specification. This is the one that Ron said you'd all memorized. Right, so here we got this is the functional specification. And what I'll do is I'll do a search, and I'll search for DC-010. Okay, and we see it we're in the contents at the moment. So DC010 is creating an ICP. And now I've come across that graphic. Nice graphic that explains all the different processes there. And now I'm onto the page where it tells me all about DC010, and it's got the business requirements, a description of it. I think it's excellent documentation, I really do. And okay, if you're going to be a distributor creating an ICP, these are the records. This is the record layout. Okay, so the record type has to be det. Then you've got to have the Icp Identifier. Now, this is actually the same information that you manually entered into the Icp attribute screen earlier on today. And so this is all the stuff that you can specify. So like the installation type. Do you remember the installation type? We had to say whether it was load or generation or both. Okay, so it's got a complete list of all the things that you can specify. And then at the end, very helpfully, it's got an example of, let me just see if I can blow that up a bit. It's got an example of a file that you could send. So HDR, netmaint, PowerCo, and sending to the registry. And what's this one mean here? We're creating one ICP. So there should only be one line here, but in fact it's word wrapping, so there really is only one line. It's just exceptionally long. and it's creating this ICP here, 99999 AB123. And it's got all of the information. So that's really quite helpful. Great documentation, the functional specification. Okay, so in this exercise, we're going to create an ICP using one of the files from your USB flash drive. Now there's a file there called createNewICP.txt. It's one of the course files. So what you can do is you can open that up and it's a file that's been partly specified for you. So you're wanting to create, you're essentially net 1, and you're wanting to send to the registry, RGST, a file that's going to create one ICP. So we've got det and Icp Identifier. Now for the Icp Identifier, you can use that spreadsheet again to invent a new ICP that you're going to create. The date, put in the date, and you have to again think of a fictitious street and a fictitious town and a region. So if you open up that file and then change the elements that are enclosed with angle brackets, get rid of the angle brackets. The angle brackets are just to identify that there's a field that needs to be replaced. So the angle brackets should go. Put in today's date. For the time, put in noon. For the Icp Identifier, use your spreadsheet. Put in all that stuff. And then save the file onto the Z drive. And again, please, can you can everybody choose different names for your files so that I can transfer them all across? And remember, no spaces in your file names. So what I'm going to do, I know a number of people have actually made their files and put them into the Z drive. So I'm going to send those off to the registry. And hopefully the registry should process those and make some ICPs for you. And then you should be able to log on and do a search and find your new ICPs. Okay, so on the Z drive, got a whole bunch of files here. And I'm going to send those across to the toReg directory. You might like to log on to the system and do a search to see if your new ICP has appeared. When you do your search, it might be a good idea to uncheck that box that says only commissioned ones, because your ICPs are in a pretty rudimentary state. They're only in a new state. Yep. Right, so we've tried to FTP some files to the registry, and a number of you have been successful. And I've just had a look in the reject directory, and there seem to be rather a large number of files there. Don't know why. And variety of different numbers there. There's a 20, I don't know what these numbers mean, 201, 204. But anyway, that's the reason why your file was rejected. So it could be maybe you haven't correctly capitalized something or other, I don't know, or maybe you've deleted a comma out of the file, some reason like that. So that's the FTP program, and we'll be using FTP a bit later on as well when we're MEPs. So we're just coming on to the part of the course where we're going to be MEPs, and let's invite Ron to come and give us an introduction to the MEP.